What's going on, everyone? Today I want to take you through a quick build guide for the Condemned class. This is the weakest starting class overall, as you get pretty bad gear, but you also have the most potential starting at level 1. What's really cool is we're going to get this set up relatively early on and be able to delete enemy health quickly, applying bleed, poison, and burn all at the same time, and with a really fun weapon moveset that feels aggressive and powerful. This is the Acidic Psycho build in all of its glory. Starting out, you want to select the Condemned class. This gives you flat 9 across all your stats and starts you at level 1, which means you upgrade faster and get points into the attributes that matter most. But at the same time, your armor's bad, you can die easily, and the rock as a throwing item is subpar at best. The buckets you get to use are dual-handed fist weapons which scale badly and have low damage. Luckily, their saving grace is they have some decent stagger, so your best bet is to focus on heavy attacks that move you across large distances. Our goal by the end is to go from all level 9 stats to something that looks similar to this right here. Early on, you're going to want to level Inferno and Radiance to about 14, both for damage reasons and so you can use a really good spell early on. Don't level Stamina at all until we get past the first 5 bosses. You can use the Stamina Ring at the start of the game to make up for it until then. Everything else goes into health so you can survive attacks right away and become a tank later on. For your weapons, you want the Raw Mangler Axe. If you leave the first Vestige point after the tutorial boss and head until you reach a fire skeleton with a massive sword, you can climb a ladder and go Umbral here. This opens up a bridge that leads to a secret back area. In the middle is one free Raw Mangler Axe. Now, we do want another, and thankfully there is an enemy directly next to the Windmill Vestige that drops it commonly. Take him out a few times to try for it, and if your luck is really that bad, maybe move on and you could definitely get another one later on too. But dual wielding 2 of these babies is awesome. They don't use a ton of your stamina, so you can avoid throwing points into that early on. They also attack very quickly and apply burning, which will make enemies take fire damage over time. Now, the heavy attack is a bit long for me, and we won't use it much as a result, but you do get some incredible forward movement on it. These are going to scale with Inferno, which we'll be putting points into anyway, to use Umbral Magic. The weapons have such a low stat requirement that you can use both for the first main boss if you want to. So get both right away, and you're on the right track. As for the Umbral Eye, there really isn't much to choose from early on. The best one by miles grants an additional lantern charge. Head back to the windmill location and walk up to the bell door there. Turn left and go Umbral, and a new area should be opened up. Down below is a corpse you can siphon to grant the Umbral Eye of the Betrayed. In the main hub, talk to Molehue and you can socket this in your lamp, which is such a massive upgrade for the gameplay. 2 lantern charges lets you easily control bosses and deal with annoying enemies without trouble. We will be using Umbral Magic on this character, which lets you apply poison to your weapons. This is a very low stat requirement, so you can use it early on, and poison does some really solid damage over time that can be applied in only a few hits. To get this, you first need the Bowl of Revelations. After what's technically the 3rd boss, which is a holy flail-wielding lady, you'll be in a large outside area. It's got plenty for you to explore and loot, but the bowl is your main target. You want to go until you reach the next Vestige point, which should have an NPC near it. Once here, you'll continue on until the next area. Eventually, you'll walk down a long plank area with a spiky guy at the very end. Defeat him and head down the ladder there. Once down, there should be a flower bed with another ladder near it. First, go Umbral, and then a large platform will spawn underneath the ladder. In the center is a corpse which contains the Bowl of Revelations. Now that you have the item, go back to the main hub and give it to Molehue, the Lantern Merchant. He will then sell a spell called Poison Weapon. It only costs 8 Radiance and Inferno to use, which is nuts because it's basically usable for every class. Now, you also need to buy a catalyst to use it with. Molehue luckily sells a very cheap version of one, so make sure to grab it. It requires 12 Radiance and 12 Inferno to use. I said get both up to 14 so we have good damage and are able to use both items when we pick them up here. Replace the rock in your inventory with the catalyst and slot the poison weapon. You can now apply a powerful poison to your axes and deal both burn and poison over time, as well as hit with strong magic damage. As far as the first area of the game, this is about all we can get. I personally was running the amulet called Princess Sting during all of this, which can be found near the Pyro Merchant under the main hub. It's a video in itself, honestly, but that grants damage for less equip load. Since Condemned doesn't get much armor anyway, it was a nice bonus for early on. Now, the next major area is going to be a swamp, and we don't really need anything here at all. Continue to pump health in both magic stats if you want. Use the fire and poison on your weapons to melt all the enemies as you clear everything out. Once you manage to defeat the next major boss, that being a tree sentinel type guy, you can clear out the first pylon and will next get some massive upgrades for the build. Once you defeat the Hushed Saint, you'll need to soul siphon the memory in that arena and gain his Remembrance. Back at Molehu, you should be able to buy his entire armor set, for the chest, boots, arms, and then it doesn't have a helmet. Run with the helmet this class starts with, and you have an insane poison monster look. The defense on this armor is pretty nice, and with everything you have, you should still be under the heavy dodge and in the medium limit. After the same boss, there will again be a vestige checkpoint. We want 3 separate items in this area. For starters, there's a ring called the Panoptic Ring. Turn to your left as soon as you leave the vestige, and there will be a corpse strung up. Hit it down with a throwing item like the rock, and you can pick up the Panoptic Ring, which will increase your Inferno and Radiance attributes by 1. Not really a significant upgrade in the long run, but more damage is more damage, and you can switch this out further into the game if you go in other directions build-wise. Next, we need an amulet. Stay out of the Umbral realm and continue on through this area. You should follow the wooden bridges until you see a ladder up in the air. Let it down and continue on towards the right. Up the ladder, there should be a massive bonfire. Defeat the enemies there and climb up another ladder just behind the bonfire. There will be several enemies fighting up ahead with a chest behind them. Inside is the Pendant of the Burden, which increases your damage for every status effect applied to the enemy. Right now, we already have 2 we can apply, which makes this a really strong item for the build. Next, go back to the vestige and you will go straight. Go Umbral and you can let down this bridge, which is a shortcut. Now continue on until you reach the next area. It looks like a rocky cave. As soon as you see this, turn around and look at the right wall. A very small ladder should lead you to 2 enemies. Behind them is a makeshift hut you can break the door down to, and inside is the Bloodbane Ring, which causes poison buildup to also build up bleed at the same time, thus granting you 3 total statuses at any given time. Now, I tried this on the next couple bosses and was not disappointed. You have the armor to take a couple hits if need be, allowing you to be very aggressive. Apply your poison and then rush the boss after he finishes a combo. You should be able to proc both statuses after about 5 or 6 hits from both weapons, which means hit him a couple times, back up to avoid a combo, then rush again. This will then cause him to burn, bleed, and be poisoned, which should greatly decrease his health over time. Now at this point, you can run around as the statuses deal with him, or keep being patient with the combos and get your fast swings in here and there. Any bosses you're able to soul siphon, well guess what? That's 2 full lantern charges you have that gives you enough time to apply your statuses yet again. And on top of all of that, this game gives you a free death where you teleport to the Umbral. So once you get the statuses procced, be extremely greedy and aggressive. You're going to get more damage from the statuses being procced during this time. If you happen to go down, you're still good and can get back up, then play maybe a little bit more safe. Your amulet buffs your damage 3 total times at least, your ring boosts your damage stats, and then your other ring procs bleed at the same time as poison, which also makes you deal more physical damage. Done correctly, this deletes enemies, and the movement of the axes lets you do it easily. I will mention that at this point in the build, your stats are actually bad damage-wise. The statuses are what's putting in the work. So after this, you should throw some points into stamina, about up to 15 at least. Then you have 2 separate options. Either increase both Radiance and Inferno to use more Umbral magic and buff the poison damage. Or you can pump Inferno as high as possible, since that's what both our weapons scale with, giving you room to play around with the build for the rest of the game, but also assuring you won't really hit a wall. To best see how exactly this build works, just check out the Light Reaper here. A boss fight you can't technically win since he isn't supposed to take damage from you at this point in the game. First off, poison can be applied to him, which can deal 4ths of his health before needing to be applied again. Then you have this section of damage right here. So he lands and I start going ham. Poison and burning are quickly applied when all of a sudden bleed comes in and starts spurting away his health. And even after, the fire and poison are still taking him down while I run away. The setup just works and is pretty easy to put together in the first couple hours of the game. Hopefully you enjoyed this build, and if you did, a like down below would be fantastic. I had a lot of fun putting this together, as poison is ridiculous on enemies it can be applied to. In the rare times it doesn't work, you still have powerful melee attacks that shred quickly. Good luck swinging your axes around like a maniac, and I'll catch you next time.